Hi, my name is Robert. Please read the comments in the About section of this video. It has valuable information and updates. My YouTube channel has a disclaimer video that I encourage you to watch. And please like, share, and subscribe. I hope you found what you're looking for. Thank you very much for watching. In this video, I want to give you my take on transmissions, whether you want to service them or not, or whether or not you need to flush them, do a fluid exchange, what kind of fluid to put in, stuff like that. One of the reasons I want to bring you this video is because my primary driver, 850 95 model I call Panther, it has damaged its second transmission. I know that transmission is damaged and is needing replacement because I overheated it, overloaded it, overworked it. And the reason you can tell that is because you can check the fluid, see how the fluid looks. Yesterday I replaced the radiator on the car. I had to drain out a little bit of the transmission fluid because the transmission has a heater / cooler going through that radiator, and the fluid looked horrible. So I recommended that the lady get that fluid changed. Most auto manufacturers are putting in what they call lifetime transmission fluid. Basically what that means is they put fluid in there that they don't want you to mess with because they don't want that transmission failing while that car is under warranty. If they thought the transmission fluid in the transmission would last forever, they would give you a unlimited mileage lifetime warranty on the transmission. Well, you're not seeing that. In a lot of vehicles, including these Volvos that I like to drive, these cars have a transmission that has lines hooked up to the radiator. There's one of them there. That line comes from the transmission into the radiator. There's a bar that goes from the top of the radiator down to the bottom of the radiator that coolant runs across to help, one, heat up the transmission fluid a little quicker, to help that transmission fluid maintain the temperature, which is relatively close to the temperature of the antifreeze. So they call it a transmission cooler. I actually call it a heater cooler on these transmissions. When my transmission started acting up, I studied a lot on different posts and websites about transmissions. And the bottom line is, a transmission can last a very long time. However, once the fluid is overheated, that fluid becomes contaminated and damaged, that transmission starts to decay at a lot faster rate. On one site, the transmission mechanic actually said that most transmission fluids start to overheat or burn around 210 degrees Fahrenheit, and every 5 degrees hotter than that it gets, that fluid is dramatically altered. Its ability to lubricate and clean the transmission parts is dramatically reduced. And if you overheat a transmission by 20 degrees, you can cut the remaining life of that transmission in half. Prime example, me and my wife was traveling around the country helping folks. I went through the, I don't know if it's, they call it Death Valley in California. It had a constant uphill grade, maybe 4%, 3%. It was extremely hot, in excess of 100 degrees. They had warning signs along the side of the road telling people, cut their air off, take it easy on your car, because they didn't want your car overheating and you getting stuck on that road. And of course, me and my excitement, I blasted right through it. Had the car overloaded with equipment and tools, went up that hill, boosting most of the way. My engine on my car actually heated up to around 230, 235 degrees. Any other time, the temperature rarely reaches around 200 on the highway. With that excessive temperature, on my engine, my transmission heated up as well. I drove another 3,000-4,000 miles. I arrived home. I checked my transmission fluid. It was burnt a little bit, so I did a drain and fill, put some fresh fluid in there, but I didn't get all of that bad fluid out, probably like I should have. So there I was, continuing to drive with bad transmission fluid. Now, I've heard of these cars having transmissions in them that last in excess of 500,000 miles. Here I was on my second transmission at about 325, 330, and I needed to take another road trip. Well, my plans was to install a transmission cooler and replace all the fluid. I didn't get around to it. One thing led to another, and I left and hit another road trip. Took another 7,000 miles with that bad transmission fluid in the transmission. Fortunate for me, God had mercy on us, and we made it back home with no problems at all. However, a week or a week and a half later, I was on a local little trip, and the transmission started acting up. Checked the fluid, it is bad. So I drained some out, put some fresh one in. I've been limping around ever since. Here's a couple of good things. According to your owner's manual, it takes about 30 minutes for your transmission to fully warm up. So if you're riding around town 10, 15, 20, up to 30 minutes, your transmission never really reaches its peak temperature. Now, because it's hooked up to your radiator, as soon as your car warms up, 5-10 minutes max, your transmission fluid is now being heated with that hot coolant in the side of your radiator. Now, the goal is to get the transmission fluid warmed up nice and quick so that the transmission works great, and then stop the fluid from getting too hot where it burns, which, according to some of these sites, is anywhere in excess of 210 degrees. Well, while I'm driving around town, my car flirts up around 216, gets cooled back down to 210 or 206, going back and forth with the cooling fan. So that will help maintain that temperature of that transmission right around the flirting overheat temperature of 210 degrees. So I guess I need to make a long story short. I can't make it any longer than I have. What you want to do is you want to pull your transmission dipstick, and you want to see what the fluid is like on the transmission. As you can see on this dipstick, this transmission fluid is brown at best. No redness in it. That stuff has probably been burnt or has been flirting around that overheat temperature. This car needs the transmission fluid replaced. So I would recommend having this transmission fluid changed as soon as possible. Number two, if you know your transmission, because of your driving conditions, causes it to heat up, or you're towing or doing things like that, you may want to change the transmission fluid more often than not. For instance, I had mine on a 50,000 mile cycle. Anytime I tow, I changed it in 25,000 miles. That was probably good. Now, if you have a situation where you're constantly, in your mind, heating this transmission up, or you're towing or things like that, which will cause it to heat up, you may want to install what they call an external transmission cooler, and either bypass the radiator or put it in series with the radiator so that your transmission can get cooled down. Fortunately, those transmissions overheating is a very common problem with the white block Volvos. Here, I'm looking at the transmission stick on my red block Volvo. Let me pull it so we can see the fluid in it. Now, on the left is the fluid out of my 850. On the right is the fluid out of my 740. These 740s rarely have transmission issues, and as you can see, that fluid is a lot closer to actual red. To sum this up, here's my recommendation. Get some of the transmission fluid out of your car, either off the dipstick or out of that transmission somehow. put it on a white cloth. If it looks brown or close to black, like you see on the left, you need to get that fluid replaced as soon as possible. If it's pinkish or a little reddish, like you see here in the middle, you may want to consider servicing that sometime in the future. And the transmission fluid is red or bright pink on a white paper towel or something, I would leave it alone. It's probably fine. Past, I have shown what transmission fluid looks like coming out of these Volvos. Looks pretty close to this, which I think is engine oil actually, but it should look nice red like this. So if you take a little fluid out and it looks dark like that, you definitely want to get it out of your transmission. The sad thing about it is mechanics that service these Volvos a lot, they see this dark fluid and that doesn't alarm them. It really should be alarming, but it's not. So you don't want to take your car just anywhere to get the transmission service. You want to take it to a place that is very familiar with replacing fluid in your transmission, either the dealer or a specialty shop for your type of cars. Because if they hook your transmission up to a machine and start a power flush on your transmission, and they start the flush in the wrong direction, it'll destroy the transmission. If they do it in the right direction, it is perfectly fine to have all the fluid replaced in your transmission, even if your transmission has 200,000 or 300,000 miles. If your transmission is functioning well, it is okay to replace that fluid. Of course, vehicles have two kinds of transmissions. They have an automatic transmission or they'll have a manual transmission. Some of them have some kind of blend, but really that's an automatic transmission. The benefits of having a manual transmission is it doesn't have 1,000 parts inside of it, and it also has fluid that can take a lot higher heat. Your automatic transmission fluid, again, it starts to cook and burn at about 210 degrees. So when you find that you're going to change the fluid in your automatic transmission, do your best to stay with the recommended type that's in the owner's manual. Also, try to find out if there's a full synthetic version of that transmission fluid. That way, you have fluid in there that can possibly take more heat. Your standard transmission fluid probably cooks around 210. A full synthetic transmission fluid may start to cook around 240. So you got a better chance of that fluid taking the heat. So if you got any questions, go ahead and post them. Again, if you got a car that the transmission runs a little hot, you may want to install an external transmission cooler. If you feel that this information was useful, please like it and share it with your social media friends. You can subscribe to my channel so that you will get notifications of future videos that I post. You can follow me on Twitter, and if you need to contact me directly, please visit my website. And if you have any questions, leave them below, and someone or myself will reply to them. Again, thank you very much for watching.